that work, Rebecca?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar. Special guest Ian Walsh, who's going to teach us the secrets he's learned in securing private money. Quick disclosure. CAMA plan, all this information is for educational purposes, CPAs, attorneys, etc. CAMA plan does not give any tax, legal, or investment advice. These are a self-directed IRA basically lets you invest in anything that you want. There's a few things that you can invest in, and that's collectibles and life insurance. So as long as it doesn't classify as that, you're most likely able to use your IRA to invest in it. The IRS never tells you what you can invest in, only what you cannot invest in. This is what we see the majority of our clients investing in: real estate, precious metals, notes and mortgages, and private placements is a big field. And a lot of that is note funds, real estate, and other private ventures. You can use all types of IRAs, doesn't matter. And you can also partner them together as well. So you see the tax deferred side and then the tax free. If you have any questions regarding those, just let me know. I'll have my contact information up in just a moment. I'm going to come back to this slide and let Ian go from there. But my contact information can be found here, R. Fisher at CAMA Plan. Fisher's with a C there. And also visit our website at camaplan.com. And let's just go back here. So without further ado, I want to introduce Ian, and I'll tell us a little bit about yourself and the secrets that you're going to discuss today.
Sure. Thanks. Appreciate you having me, Ryan. Known Ryan for quite a few years now. So and I appreciate you guys having me on the show. I like working with you guys, and I know we've worked together on some prior projects. And so I think one of the best things I could probably do at this point is kind of start with like what private and hard money is and how it's used, and then kind of how maybe IRAs come into play and kind of how we built our business. So private money and hard money in the real estate space is typically used for investment properties. So we don't use our money to buy, primary residences, properties that you're going to live in. The reason being is that consumer use versus commercial use is significant here in the lending laws. So the private and hard money world are really going to be, they're designed for commercial use. Whereas if you're living in a property, it's consumer use, and the banking laws it's really the only dividing line. So our company, Hard Money Bankers, we were built, was it 2007-ish, 2006 is when we started. And, we were like anybody else that's starting out. Like, we didn't have a ton of capital to go around, and we were actually trying to build in the middle of the real estate crash, which is not easy, of the 2008. And it's a strange business because when you don't need money, everybody wants to give you money. And when you do need money, nobody wants to give you money. And back then, we were working with probably under $1 million or under $2 million, and it was some local friends or family members that had, offered up some cash to leverage against real estate. And, the way we built, though, maybe compared to other companies, was we stayed private, meaning we didn't take on bank money. And we kind of learned that game from watching some of the older players in the business that have survived multiple real estate cycles do the same thing. And I'll get into why that's significant here shortly. So the element, though, of building this business for private money and hard money was we would underwrite deals. They would come in as commercial investment properties, whether it's like a fix and flip or buy and hold or commercial retail or something like that. And then at that point, we would look at it and say, okay, this looks like a good deal. We're going to be very low leverage on it relative to the after repaired value, because we're always planning on lending our property against the improved value of a project, not usually the as is value, which we can do, but we're really most of the time looking at the ARV, as they call it. And we're usually about 65% of that. And there's a lot of reasons that I could go into as to why 65% is a significant number. It's not a made up number. It actually is to sustain, you know, a cataclysmic event or a market turn, to still get out with your shirt. You actually, a lot of people think, well, you're at 65% of the ARV, you're going to be fine. You're going to make money if you had to take my house. That's not always the case. It's really designed to be in a position to just make sure you get your principal back. But nonetheless, you know, we had started in 2006 and 2007. And at that time, we were deploying capital. My partners had been in the real estate space for a little bit, in the commercial field. And we knew how to run comps, and we knew what good deals look like. And we knew where you should be on your numbers. And that was that really to this day is the secret sauce of our business, is that the underwriting in our company is done by the partners, and it's done quickly. It's not, we don't use appraisals. You know, I've closed deals in 24 hours because I can look at a deal right away and determine, based on the borrower that I'm dealing with and based on, you know, the asset at hand, if this is a good deal or to secure your money in a first position against. A lot of times you come into scenarios where people, you know, I might say to somebody, maybe I'm lending to Bob Smith, right? And I might say to him, hey, Bob, I'm going to put up $100,000 here. You know, you need 130. And so that means he has to bring some money to the closing table. Well, when you bring money to the closing table to make the whole deal whole, sometimes people will come with, you know, personal cash, and other times they come with maybe money from their IRA. So I might get a call from like Ryan's firm or something that's saying, hey, they're going to be transferring in money from their IRA. Now, as a lender, it's a little bit different when we're dealing with that end of it. And as I'm trying to think of the secrets and tips as we go, you're going to get lower leverage when you're dealing with an IRA because of the, you know, we can't collect on the personal guarantee functionality of it. So an IRA actually protects the borrower from any kind of personal guarantee. So we're aware of that when we're lending to somebody bringing an IRA or lending to their IRA, that our exposure level will be lower because we have nothing else to collect on, which is a lot of people, some people know that. People say, do you lend to IRAs? The answer is yes, but you know, you're going to have a lower level of exposure. So
Ian, I do just want to pop in there real quick and
Sure.
just make that clear to people that you do the non-recourse lending to
Yes.
IRAs, but you also let IRAs lend to you to go into your deals that you're underwriting.
Right. So that's right. So we can, so it goes both ways. So from the lending out perspective is one side and the lending in perspective is the other. Now, I don't raise capital per se. We actually have a lot more money than deals out there right now, but we definitely have what Ryan just said. You know, I know quite a few people that lend from their IRA. They lend out for these projects. So, you know, some of the secrets though, you know, if you are coming in as a flipper and you're looking to get money, I would say from when you're approaching a company such as mine, the private end of it is key, finding out where the money's coming from. So if you're in a situation where the company that you're approaching is bank funded, you're going to be looking at a scenario where they're going to be waiting for an appraisal to come back. The person you're probably talking to isn't the decision maker, and they can't close in 24 hours. They probably want your W-2s and tax returns and all this stuff. Whereas like our company is, I'm going to look at the deal and have an answer for you sometimes within minutes, because I just know the market and I know the space. And our company is built like a mom and pop shop that has the capacity of like a bank volume wise. And we try to keep that feel. From the lending out perspective that Ryan is talking about, there are definitely guidelines, and that's why you have to be in touch with a company like Camaplan to understand, you know, what you are capable of doing, what you're legally capable of doing with your IRA to not violate any rules or anything like that. I know, Ryan, what are some of the common things that you guys, when people are lending out, that they have to look out for in terms of, you know, common mistakes they might run into that you guys kind of see like, hey, you can't do that or what have you?
I mean, lending's pretty straightforward. It's not really on your side working with a company unless it's, you know, your mom and dad lending to your company, but mainly a lot of times people are looking to lend to themselves or to their own business, or, you know, their parents' IRA lend to them. And that's, prohibited. Linear ascent and descent, you can't do, and you can't lend to yourself. But otherwise, if someone's looking to work with you, that's pretty straight, clear, and easy to do.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's we keep it pretty clean and simple on the back end of our company in terms of the way we work. But for the most part, there's only so many options to lending money out, and IRAs is a good option to do that with. I would say if you're looking at this from the perspective of being an underwriter or the lender, there's some real areas that are some tips and tricks that you want to be focused on to make sure that your numbers are good. One being especially the ARV, meaning the after repair value or the value of the property in general. Like if you have to have somebody else tell you what a property is worth, even an appraiser, it's a risk that you're taking because appraisers can be wrong. They're not vested in this property. So I always say, like, you can get the opinions of anybody else you want, your realtor, your appraiser, whoever it may be. But the reality of the situation is that you need to be responsible for your own money and your own numbers. And in order to do that, you've got to know your own market. You've got to know what a house is going to sell for based on using something like the MLS system or LoopNet or whatever you're lending against. So I find it very important to know your own numbers, know what the value is. And then, lenders are typically, we're not really going to push the upside of a market, right? So if a house could sell for 200 grand, I don't assume that the person that is buying this house necessarily has the ability to even execute and put out a product that's worth that product. A lot of times, depending on who I'm dealing with, might assume that they are only capable of maybe $180,000 quality house, where they think they're probably worth 220, but they think they can get higher than the market in front of it. So usually the flipper is on one side of what they think they can get, and then the lender is on the other side of what they think they can get. But you always want to be very conservative as the lender with your numbers. And if the deal doesn't work, it doesn't work. Because our number one goal is putting out money and getting it back. It's not putting out money and then losing money. That's the one thing you can't do, especially as a small lender. Like 1 or 2 lost deals could sink you. You can't have that going on. So conservative on your ARVs is a really big deal. What I like to see when somebody calls in or somebody calls and wants to talk about a deal is when their numbers align with my numbers. So I don't usually ask for too much information from somebody, but I might say, hey, what are you buying it for? What are your renovation costs? And they might put the ARV in there. And I go, yeah, that ARV looks pretty good compared to mine. Yep, those construction numbers are good. And, pickup price is good. There's a margin in here. This is a safe bet. So when I have those things aligning, that's a huge step in the right direction when I'm going to lend out with confidence. The other thing, which I mentioned in a minute ago in terms of, tips and tricks to understanding what you're dealing with would be the construction costs. I can't tell you how many deals I see that people will tell you, they trick themselves really. So they'll buy a deal a little bit too high. And then they go, instead of like saying, no, I need to buy this lower, they go, oh, I can cut this corner and maybe do $10,000 or $15,000 less worth of work. But what's going to happen is they're either going to have to dip into their own pocket in the middle of the project, so they might as well just pay the $10,000 more, which they did, or B, they're not going to be able to put out a product that is the ARV that they were trying to get to begin with. So I like to see when people buy at the right number, and then very importantly have the right construction funding numbers. Then you kind of get into, when you're calling a lender, then a true private lender should be looking at, the 4 C's like cash, credit, character, collateral. Those are the things that we're really analyzing. So character matters in terms of, it doesn't mean like, I like you, we should go get a drink type character. It's more like, what is your capability of executing character? I deal with some people that are maybe I would never get a drink with, but they're very good at executing. And I have other people that are the nicest people in the world, but they couldn't, execute on a cup of coffee. So those things are very important when deciding on the character functionality. And you're looking for like little things like how responsive are they? How quick are they to get you what you need? Have they done projects before? How aware of the market are they? Those are the things, and those are the inside information you want to hear in a phone call. And if you're looking to lend from your IRA and you're kind of dealing with somebody, that you may or may not want to lend to, my suggestion would be not to lend to the first person that comes to you. My suggestion is meet a lot of different flippers, a lot of different investors, and start to pick up on the cues for the ones that really have their stuff together. Get a feel for that. That's really important because if you get good at it, within 30 seconds, you can tell right away. Like I always feel like there's a character, a categorized characteristic of people. Like there's this kind of flipper, then there's this kind of flipper, there's this kind of flipper. There's like 4 or 5 different categories that they all fall into. Like maybe the, meticulous, takes a long time but gets it done, or maybe the, just is all over the place, taking money from one project to pay another project. So there's different kinds. You can tell very quickly when you get on the phone with somebody, who they are and how they operate. How do they write their emails? Like how you ask them for some documents, how fast do they come back to you? All those things are a factor in what you're dealing with. And it's never worth doing a deal just to do a deal. So never risk your IRA money or never risk your lending money just to do a deal because you want to get in the game, you want to deploy the capital. I mean, really, you want as few headaches as possible. You want the money to go out, payments to come in, and you simply are ready to go. And that to me is really the most important thing about this business, is doing the right deals, not just doing a deal. And that comes down to, how big is the pipeline that you're pulling from? How many deals do you have incoming? And that's a whole different, conversation to discuss. But as far as like tips and tricks to make decisions on who you're lending to, I would really focus on getting a feel for the types of investors in your area, understanding what they do and where they're buying. One thing I always recommend, especially if you're dealing specifically in the fix and flip area, is to make sure that you're not, our product doesn't really lend well to high rental areas. And the reason being is not because you can't make a lot of money in a rental area, but it's because in a rental area, if you have to take a house back for some particular reason, as a lender, you want to liquidate as fast as you can. And you want to liquidate to an area where there's a lot of owner occupied scenarios, because another flipper is going to pick it up and then they're going to rent it out, or they're going to sell it. Whereas in a rental area, even if you buy it for 30, you put 30 in and it's only worth 70. Even if they just renovated it, the next guy who's looking for cash flow is not paying the $60,000, $70,000. They're assuming they're probably going to want to buy it for the price you paid for it. So for houses in high rental areas typically don't liquidate very well. So that's something that you want to keep in mind as a lender. You want to be in like median housing income areas that are easier to liquidate if need be. Because there's this whole thing in our business where people say they like to, loan to own and stuff like that. That is not a profitable venture and not a good way to run this business. It's like, as a lender, I guess maybe people, some company, actually, I know a couple companies that tried that, and they're no longer in the area. And it's just a bad way to do business. And especially if you're in the rental areas, you think you're picking up these properties at discounts, but by the time you take a property back, which is very rare in our company, it's actually less than most banks. But by the time you take it back, you've spent fortunes on legal, and it's not like a turn over the keys type deal. There's a legal battle that costs money, and you have to have good attorneys. You can't have the wrong attorney. So those kind of things are a real factor. So stay where it's easy. That's the keys. Just stay where it's easy. Don't make your life any more difficult than it has to be. If the loan isn't easy and it doesn't flow well from start to finish, from phone call to phone call, if it starts to get difficult and starts to get, the borrower maybe starts to become finicky and demanding, just don't do the deal, because it's not going to stop there. The deal is not going to stop. The headaches aren't going to stop when you close the deal. There's going to be headaches along the way. There's going to be finagling and asking to go outside the note and so forth. I always say, if it's easy from the get-go and it's easy to closing, it'll be easy to get your money back and redeploy and, give it back put it back in Cama's hands and do it again. And that's really what we are trying to do as a company. So, and as a lender, that's what you're really trying to do. So, Ryan, I know I talk really fast, so I don't know if there were some other things you guys wanted me to discuss. And I see there's some Q&A. I'm not sure if there's questions that are coming in.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. I know that it doesn't matter. Anybody with a Cama account, doesn't matter what state or anything, but are there any spots that you don't lend in, or states?
Any states? So one of the way our business model was designed was for locality. So we only lend in the states that we know the markets very well. And so, our underwriting is done with our partners. So I know the Philadelphia, Jersey area. I have a partner that knows North Jersey and Delaware very well. I have another partner that knows like the Harrisburg, Pittsburgh area, and another partner that knows the Maryland area. Like that's it. We don't, go to like Illinois and lend based on an appraisal. Like I know what my values are, and I don't use appraisers for that reason. Like we have to be very good about where we are. So if I don't know a location or it's outside of my comfort area, I just pass. So we particularly, you can, I guess, lend anywhere with your IRA or with any kind of money, but I'd strongly suggest, there's more deals you can do in your own backyard within driving distance. Learn that market and then learn what you're lending against. It's really important to know the values of what you're sitting on and local laws. There's each state has different laws that you have to kind of know as a lender. Some in this area, they're fairly similar state by state, but they can vary. And I have no idea what the California laws or the Montana laws or the whatever laws may be. And I get myself in trouble if I try to write up a note and they go, I can't do that. That's a law you can't do that with. So we found, for the safety of money, that the localness of it was important.
Awesome, thanks. So this is a little bit long, but I'll just read the full question. Property owned in an IRA, account worth say $150 due to actual value to IRA that CAMA values the account at. Actual value of the property is $250. Will you only lend non-recourse up to 65% of the account value or the property value? Also, what cash reserves do you require with such scenario? And I think that answer is pretty clear that you're going to look at the property value, but go ahead.
Yeah, I don't really know what your IRA's value is and so forth. That never really crosses my mind. It's really what the property value is. And then I'll tell you the number, and if the number works for you, great. But I don't really consider the actual IRA account balance or prospective balance or whatever on it. As far as like the 65% from an IRA, again, if you're pulling your money from an IRA, if you're lending from your IRA, that's fine. If you're pulling your money to bring to the table from your IRA, it's going to be a lower number because the recourse is a little riskier from my lending perspective. As far as cash reserves, yeah, I don't demand reserves, but I like to see that you can make a few payments. I don't want you to, if you're in a position where you're going to put yourself up against the wall to begin with, that's a concern to me. So it kind of goes without say that you should have the ability to make, get yourself out of a little bit of a bind if something goes south on the project.
And I will also add, for anybody, that does have an IRA, you can update your market value. We ask you for it as of December 31st each year, what we call fair market value, but you can update that anytime. So that shouldn't be a concern either way. Let's see if there's another question here. What has been some strategies that have been fruitful for hard money bankers to raise capital?
The best one is performance. So, in the beginning, you just open up your phone and make some phone calls. Like, I'm not kidding. There's, and I'm actually, hold on, let me back up. I am not advocating with how to raise money. Raise money, however, whatever the legal guidelines are. This was many, many years ago. I don't remember. I think people actually approached us, but most people know enough people, like, they know. I forget what the exact rules are for raising capital, but like, you've got to know people to a certain extent. You have to be able to prove that. But it's really not hard initially. Like, you can meet people, a lot more people with a lot more money than you realize, always guaranteed. And then once, we really got on a roll with returning money. So once we would put the money out, money would come back, put the money out, money would come back. We're doing deals with individuals. Then it was like, all of a sudden they wanted to give us more money. Then they had friends that wanted to give us more money, friends, because they realized that our track record was so, 99.9% of the time, there wasn't even a problem happening. And then when there was a problem, it was all handled and everybody was made whole. And it was like, it was a no-brainer investment for a lot of people. So with that said, track record is really important. In the beginning, it's a little tougher because you got to build that track record, but be patient with yourself, be patient with what you're doing. And if you do good on the front end, it will pay, it will just roll in on the back end.
Another quick question. What's the typical length of the loans that you guys do?
We are normally a 1-year note. We do have a 5-year product that fits. It's a 5-year on a 20-year amortization, but normally most deals are like 1 year long. Okay.
And then another one. And what's the rate of return that hard money expects on their deals?
So you're typically going to be charged, you'll see in this market now after COVID eliminated all the kind of the price hunters, you're typically going to see between 12 and 16% annualized is really going to be what the market's spaced at right now. Under that is kind of like fake money as far as I know now. I don't really know anybody closing anything under that. Most of the banks got scared out of the market after COVID.
Gotcha. And I'm sure you're going to need more details for this, and it might be best if they contact you, after this. But I'm looking for financing for a multifamily property. What are the requirements for hard money for such a venture?
For us, it's very much just the asset. So honestly, when people ask me that, I get that email all the time. An email or like, how do I do this, or what do I need? I just say, just shoot me the address, the renovation costs, and how much you're buying it for. With that information alone, I will know so much about the project, everything. I know it sounds crazy, but I'll know how well you know the project. I'll know all that kind of stuff, what you're doing and the construction numbers. And now that comes back to me knowing my market. So, but that's really all I need. Those three things emailed over to me. That's the email I receive tons of times every day from people. And I go, yep, looks like a good deal. Nope, doesn't look like a good deal. Back and forth. But that's all I need.
Okay, great. And then someone also asked, what are the requirements for the 5 years product? I'm not sure what they're asking there, but
the 5-year note. Yeah, the 5-year and the 20-year AM. Those are usually better for either an as-is scenario, a retail business scenario, or a multifamily, as is. Those are more like as is and retail values rather than ARVs. Because if you ARV that for 5 years, if you use the ARV value, the moment you put a tenant in it, it's like a car driving off a lot. You start losing value. So it's really designed for like an as-is cash out value. Like if you want to cash out of a property, maybe, or you just need the acquisition funds portion of it, or you have a retail business, that's where it's a little bit better designed.
Okay. Is the 12 to 16% what is charged to the lender? Missed the beginning of that question.
So the borrower is typically going to pay 12 to 16%. The lender will then, depending on the lender, every company's set up differently. You might have like one company, maybe it's an individual and he recognizes the entire 12 to 16%. Or you might have, if you're lending for somebody else, they might recognize like, 7 to 10% of that, depending on how it's structured with maybe the person that's brokering it or what have you. So it really depends. Honestly, that's going to be individually based. Like people that took bank money, they were getting money at 3% and deploying it like 12%. And well, actually they were like deploying it like 10, then 9, then 8, then 7. They squeezed themselves out of the market, and then the banks pulled their lines. But that's a whole different story.
And I think that's the last of the questions here. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today and giving us some of the tips that you've seen from your experiences, and appreciate all the information.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. If anybody has any additional questions, let me know, and I'd be happy to answer. We keep it simple and keep it easy, and that's really the whole point of this business. If it's difficult, if it's grinding, if it's hard, if it's dramatic, you're doing something wrong. It's a boring business, and it's designed to be boring. That's the reality of the situation.
And just real quick, how can people, I know they can go to your website, but can you go ahead and tell them your contact information as well?
Yeah, it's just my first name, IAN, and then at hardmoneybankers with an S.com. So Ian at hardmoneybankers with an S.com. My phone number direct is 215-839-3271.
Great. That's awesome. I appreciate everyone for joining us today. And if you have any questions regarding IRAs, feel free to reach out to me. And if you have any other more in-depth questions, feel free to reach out to Ian. Again, I'll put my contact information up there for you. And have a great rest of the day. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.